threw them into the street. Part of the purpose is not just in terms of provoking me, but another part of the purpose was to make it impossible for people to read those picket signs. And I'll just show you one of the picket signs that she threw into the street. These are two of the picket signs that Sue Montgomery threw into the street, kicked into the street on March 18th of last year. They say, Unitarian Universalist misuse blasphemy law 2, cover up and deny pedophilia and rape. These picket signs were freestanding picket signs. They were leaning up against a fire hydrant and a street sign post, if I remember correctly. They were highly visible to the public. And they were informing the public that yes, the Unitarian Universalist religious community, as represented by the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston, hired Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors defamation lawyer Maitre Marc-André Coulombe to falsely accuse me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in legal bullying that was clearly intended to intimidate me into taking down blog posts about what Maitre Marc-André Coulombe described as such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So this was legal bullying by the Unitarian Universalist Association, trying to conceal from the public the fact that certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, such as Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, to name but one of them, are in fact guilty of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, and have been charged, tried, and convicted of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, and spent time in jail for committing those despicable crimes. Sue Montgomery literally took my picket signs in her own hands and threw them into the street to prevent the public from seeing that. As far as I'm concerned, that's hands-on participation in Unitarian Universalist cover-up of pedophilia and rape committed by the Deputy Mayor of Valerie Plante, the Mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Sue Montgomery. She is totally 100% complicit in Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of pedophilia and rape by the Unitarian Universalist Association. She's totally complicit in various efforts by Montreal Unitarians to shut down by peaceful public protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, including this most recent police intimidation, police harassment, misuse of the criminal justice system to repress my ability to protest against clergy abuse in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. I would not be standing in front of SPVM PDQ 11 today, right now, if Sue Montgomery had not been able to prevent me from protesting in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal by accusing me of criminal harassment, what I consider to be a completely and utterly false accusation of criminal harassment that has pretty well zero validity. Like, there's really nothing I've said or done that justifies having me arrested for criminal harassment, but I guess because Sue's the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, I guess because Sue was, at the time, the deputy mayor of Valerie Plante, she was able to use her political influence to persuade the SPVM to arrest me on charges that she never would have been able to persuade them to arrest me on if she'd been an ordinary citizen, if she'd just been the Gazette's retired justice reporter. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's definitely what Yann Lafreniere would call ingérence politique involved in Sue Montgomery's criminal harassment charge against me. And as I said, you know, if I could protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, I wouldn't be here. But it's because I can't protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, because I can't exercise other charter rights, thanks to Sue Montgomery's abuse and misuse of the SPVM police force and the criminal justice system, the Canadian Criminal Code. Here I am. Just want to see what time it is and see what's happening with the camera. See how much time is left. Okay, so I got about 8 minutes of recording time left. So yeah, let's look at the other side of this picket sign. So it says, Quebec Crown prosecutors undermined charter rights and freedoms. This picket sign was actually displayed in front of the Palais de Justice some years ago. I think it goes back to 2015 or something. Essentially what happened is the Quebec Crown prosecutors went on strike, and they picketed outside of the Palais de Justice. So there were literally dozens, and in sometimes even hundreds of Quebec Crown prosecutors protesting outside of the Palais de Justice in Old Montreal back some years ago. And because Quebec Crown prosecutors had in fact undermined my charter rights and freedoms in the past, partly as a result of spurious complaints that had been brought against me again by Sue Montgomery and other Montreal Unitarians, including Reverend Diane Rollert of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, my ability to protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal was shut down for a full year as a result of a peace order I was forced to sign, as a result of Sue Montgomery and Reverend Diane Rollert and a bunch of other Montreal Unitarians reporting to the SPVM. They were very frightened of me. They thought I was going to come into the church and shoot them. Just ridiculous, paranoid fantasies as far as I'm concerned. If they really believed these things, they really were much more in need of psychiatric treatment than SPVM police protection. I have been completely non-violent throughout my protests. The only time there's been some very low-level violence on my part is when I was physically assaulted by David Horn of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, and all I did was stop walking backwards after he shoved his face into my camera. For some reason, David Horn thought it'd be a good idea to essentially assault me, and at one point, as part of his intimidation, he put the lower part of his face into my lens, I guess to block it and to keep his hands free. I was afraid he was going to punch me or something, and so what I did is I just stopped walking backwards, and that caused the camera to press into the lower part of his face much more forcefully than he was expecting, because he no doubt expected me to continue walking backwards. So he's a fairly heavy guy, probably 200 pounds. So he had 200 pounds of David Horan pressing into my camera because he was still walking forward and I wasn't. And that basically caused him to get a little cut on his lip because he ripped his face away from the camera. I suspect he got the cut on his lip as a result of ripping his face away from the camera when it pressed into his face harder than he was expecting. That's the highest level of violence that has ever come from me, and it was purely defensive. And yet, Montreal Unitarians, going back to 2007, maybe 2008, were reporting to the SPVM that they were very, very frightened of me. Some of them were saying that they thought it was an imminent threat that I would come into the church and shoot them. This is just insanity as far as I'm concerned. If you knew anything about my behavior, I've always been very peaceful, always been very calm, even when assaulted by Unitarians and so on. Well, by the way, if you want to see the video of David Horan assaulting me, well, just search for David Horan, Montreal Unitarian on YouTube. You'll find it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I have nothing to apologize for there. And as I said, that video, if you watch it, it shows the absolute highest level of so-called violence that has happened in terms of me in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal since I began protesting in May of 1998. Like I said, all I did was stop walking backwards after David Horn shoved his face into my camera. That's it, that's all, and he got a cut lip out of the deal. So let me just see how the time is on this thing. Okay, got a few minutes left. So we'll come back to the Crown prosecutors. I wouldn't be here today if the Quebec Crown prosecutor didn't press charges against me. The complaint that Sue made to the SPVM, which resulted in my arrest for alleged criminal harassment, was essentially there was really nothing in it that can be reasonably construed as criminal harassment. It was peaceful public protest. It was asking questions at political events and city council meetings. And one chance encounter I had with Sue, where I reminded Sue quite politely that she falsely accused me of libel, that she needed to make amends for falsely accusing me of libel. And I just reminded her that I expected to ask her a question at the next city council meeting. I do believe that the reason I was arrested is because Sue was like literally desperate to prevent me from asking any more questions about her complicity in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse cover-up, especially in terms of her involvement in abusive misuse of the SPVM police force and the criminal justice system. I think Sue was very, very worried about what could happen if I continued to ask that kind of question at city council meetings. And so she claimed to be very, very frightened of me and had me arrested for criminal harassment, even though there were virtually no valid grounds for that charge. And I think the sergeant detective knew that perfectly well. And I think the Crown prosecutor should have known that. It's one thing for Sue Montgomery to make it a complaint to the SPVM here at PDQ 11, which she did on December 5th. It's one thing for me to be arrested for alleged criminal harassment based on that complaint. But it is another thing for a Quebec Crown prosecutor to move forward with that complaint, to basically have me charged. The Crown prosecutor could have looked at the evidence and looked at the, is this really criminal harassment? What are the realistic possibilities of obtaining conviction in this case? And a good, competent Crown prosecutor who knew the law, who maybe did a little bit of research into recent criminal harassment jurisprudence and so on, and what jurisprudence was, what criminal harassment was all about, in my opinion, which is protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, by the way, freedom of opinion. In my opinion, the Quebec Crown prosecutor who pressed charges against me pressed charges when they had no valid grounds to do so, or absolutely minimal grounds to do so, really nothing there, and yet he pressed charges. So here we are. Anyhow.